Okay, so we have multiple components coming together. We've got this, and then we actually have another part that goes in between that's going to connect to the rocker arm. It's called the return rod. I'm going to suggest we leave the mates as they are at the moment till we get that other component in place here. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next component we're bringing in, which is the -145 return rod. So we're going to insert component. We're going to look for the -145. It should look pretty much the same as the other one, but longer, if you recall. And we're going to rotate this in orientation where the spoon-like flat is facing the flat on the other rod. So if we drag those two components apart, the first thing we can do is we can do a mate between the cylinder on the longer rod to this pinhole on the other rod. And we're not going to lock rotation. And then we're going to mate the flat face on one to the flat face on the other. We'll accept that. And now we can move this linkage around. Okay, so now we're going to mate the inside cylinder of the one pinhole to the rocker arm, and I'll bring those together. And now we need to find a location where the crank lines up with those two components. Okay, so if you run into this alignment problem I'm having, it's because we're using a sub-assembly with a movable component here. So perhaps that shouldn't be its own sub-assembly so that the motion will show up in that piston. But what I did is I went back to the mates between the cylinder and the piston on this side, and I suppressed that mate for now. And that'll allow us to move all the other joints and get them in alignment. So there is a position that this crank can be in that will allow all those alignments to succeed. So let's try now creating a mate between one of them and the crank, and it resolves where that unique position is. And we're going to accept that concentric relationship with this cylinder removed. It resolves the position where everything is aligned. Now technically the little piston inside here is probably not at the correct angle for our assembly, but to achieve that I would need to assemble that at this final stage. So that was perhaps a mistake to make that part of the sub-assembly. Okay, so now we have a bunch of pins we need to put in, and we're going to put this one in first so that we can make the main post visible again. So in most of the places we used a 3/16 long dowel pin, and that's the part number 414. So we're going to do an instant, and we have 3 instances of that pin occurring. So let's go through and let's put those in first. So we have 3 occurrences. 1, 2, 3 places. Okay, so we're going to go insert component, and we're going to grab the 414 part number, ends in 414. Open, and we're going to stick the pin out there in space. We'll save. Control C on the bar, hit empty space, Control V. We're going to go back to the parent bar and we're going to go Control V again. So we now have 3 of those instances of that pin. We can go mate from cylinder to cylinder, accept, and then we can go, we'll drag the pin out and we'll do a mate between an advanced mate using widths. And we're going to select either end of our dowel pin. And then we'll pick our tabs as the flats of the one part. And that'll equally center the steel pin that goes in that feature. Okay, now we can go back to our tree and we're going to look for which component's invisible, which was part of a sub-assembly. So we need to look at our sub-assemblies. 57, I believe it's part of the 55. Yeah, our 115 is invisible. We're going to make it visible again. And then continue to place these other 2 dowel pins. So one location's here, one's here. So we're going to go mate. We're going to go by outside surface, inside of a pin hole. We're going to accept that location. We're going to drag the pin forward. We're going to do an advanced mate of width. We're going to select both ends of the pin. And we're going to center those about the 2 faces of the rocker arm. Alright, we have one more pin to place. And we're going to pick a standard mate. We're going to select the outside surface of the pin. We're going to select inside diameter of one of the holes. We're going to accept that. And we're going to drag the pin out in space. We're going to go down to advanced mates. We're going to select width. Select both ends of our pin. And then both sides of our rocker arm. And we'll accept that. Okay, we're down to the nitty gritty. We just got a couple other things to do. We have 2 more pieces of hardware. So we have a 2mm pin, which goes in one place, and that is through the front of the flywheel. We did that on purpose. The 2mm pin is the standard shaft of an electric motor for RC. So you can get lots of belts, pulleys, and gears. And so that's the only metric component on this assembly. So we're going to go to Insert Components, and we're going to grab the pin number. It's item number 3 on our list, and it ends in 225 is the part number. Grab the pin. Hit OK. There's our 2mm pin. We're going to mate it to its outside diameter, to the inside diameter of this hole. And we're going to accept the concentric, and we'll go ahead and lock the rotation on that piece. Hit OK. Unfortunately, it buried itself down inside the whole assembly. So let's see if we can see it. We can't. Alright, so we'll highlight. We're going to exit mate. We're going to right click on the drive post, and we're going to make it invisible. And then we're going to take the axle and we're going to right click on it going to make it invisible, and there's our pin hiding in there. Drag that back out. And we're going to go back to the 55 assembly and make both those components that we hid visible again. And now we want to mate the flat end of the pin to the bottom edge of the 2mm hole, and we'll hit accept. So we should have a pin sticking out the front. And then the last pin, there's two instances of a longer pin in two locations. It connects the rocker arm and connects the linkages to the crank. So we're going to insert components, and we're going to go and find the part number, which is item number 1 on our drawing. Right here, item number 1 ends in 419. We're going to select that component. We're going to place one in space. We'll hit save. Click on it in the tree. Control C, click in space, Control V. We get a duplicate of it. Now we can mate the outside cylinder to the cylinder on the main post. And we'll go ahead and lock rotation. And then on this one, we're going to just, because it's the same width as the post, it's 1/2 inch long, we're going to mate the face of the pin to the corresponding face on the main post. Hit OK. And then we have one more to place, and we are done. So we're going to mate the cylinder of the pin. And let's do it with the cylinder in the actual crank, because it would be pressed into that component. And then we lock rotation. We're going to accept the concentric. We'll drag through. Now we're going to mate the base of this pin with the back of the crank so that they're coincident. Hit accept, and that's how that component goes together. Alright, so the only bump we hit was with this piston. If you really wanted to, you could go back to its sub-assembly and adjust the angle of the piston. But for the purposes of this assignment, I'm going to leave it that way and probably change it for the next class so that that works a little bit better. Alright, well, thank you very much, and that's it for this assignment. It's a big one. It's worth 300 points, so it's a big chunk of your grade. 3 times what the other models were worth individually. And you have to have everything modeled and downloaded in order to get this place. So if you fell a little behind, you need to make sure you go back and model everything. Now I want this uploaded as a zip file. You're going to take everything that you have in your folder and create a zip file so it all comes together. So I create this all at once for each student. And if you need help with that, look at the auxiliary video that's attached to this assignment on how to make a zip file. All right, thanks a lot and have a great evening.